Hello again, guys. In this video, I wanted to talk about an answer and give some thoughts on the question, what's a dead giveaway that you grew up poor? So I saw this question online just to give you some context. I thought it was an interesting question, and I was reflecting on it, and I made some notes. I made about 7 notes here. And I thought that I would give my reflections and thoughts, and I don't know, you might find them useful, you might not find them useful, they might give you some thought, I don't know. But I just wanted to get them out there. I wanted to get them out of me. And here we go. So there was so much this question internally where it took me, and a lot came out. And one of the first things that I was reflecting on is, isn't it interesting that this person is in a place in their life that they're actually thinking about how people view them, right? How people view other people. And that's actually one of the things that I think is really important. And I want to begin off with the fact that other people do see us in a certain way. Other people do project and imbue us with certain value or certain status. And it is important to understand that. It's one of the things that I learned actually when I was working in schools. One of the things that I learned is that, you know, a lot of students tend to want to do whatever it is that they want to do and not recognize that whilst you can do whatever it is that you want to do, you have to understand that you live within a community, and in the context of that community, you will be judged or you won't be judged depending on what you do. For example, you might choose to do OnlyFans, which is fine, and it's your God-given right, and the British system and laws allow you to be able to start an OnlyFans. That's absolutely fine. However, that may come with some complications around how schools, for example, if you want to work with young people, or you want to come in close proximity with young people, or maybe you might want to get a certain type of role, maybe a public role, or you're going to be working for some sort of office. All of that you might be exempt from operating in because of the decision that you have made. So that's one of the first things, as I was thinking about this and I was reflecting on it, that's one of the things that I really thought about. I really thought about how many of us in life, we don't realize that our choices do have a price. Right? I said to a friend of mine recently that you can have whatever it is that you want, however, and do whatever it is that you want, however, it will have a price. Everything has a price in one way or another. And sometimes, even though we don't care about that price might be put onto our family. It might be put onto our loved ones, right? You may choose to want to take your wages at the end of the month and go out and go to the football, or go gamble it, or go and spend it on trainers. But if you cannot pay your rent, and you are renting from friends of yours, or you're renting from family members of yours, you put them, even though you may not care, you put them in a really awkward position, because now they're having to consider, are you the best person for them to be renting to? So that's just one of the first things that I was thinking about. The second thing that I was thinking about is that many people wouldn't actually realize that you're poor. And the reason why, or you grew up poor. And the reason why I say this is because human beings have this amazing capacity to transcend where we have started. Human beings, we have the ability to grow. We have the ability to develop. We have the ability to progress and to become successful. So actually, one of the themes with people who are successful in all kinds of domains, whether that be relationship, their business or careers, whether that be in terms of their health, many of them had a lot of failure. Many of them come from a place of insufficient, insecurity, of sadness, of loss. Their beginnings were not the best beginnings, and yet they managed to overcome those to be able to become who they are today. So that's one of the other things that I think is really important. And I was really thinking about that. I think there is the human will is so powerful, and I think some of us don't really recognize how powerful it is. We don't really recognize how powerful the human will, the human force actually is in its ability to just grow, to just keep going, to never give up, to just power through and to really just overcome obstacle after obstacle. I think a lot of people don't realize that. So that's one of the other things. On this, I think some really clear, evident things of the fact that someone grew up poor, one of which can be communication. And there's multiple things on this. Communication meaning education, meaning the words that they use, meaning the language that they use. Do they use sophisticated English? Do they use... Now, listen, because a lot of people are going to say, well, just because you don't use advanced English words, it doesn't mean necessarily that, or just because you do use those words, it doesn't necessarily mean that you grew up poor. But or that you are wealthy or whatever, it just simply means that it's an indicator, right? Because the more educated you become, the more of a wider range of vocabulary which is available to you. And that is important because the more successful and the higher up you go in the business world and practically in the political or the economical arena, one of the things that starts becoming really important is that the battleground is no longer done on hard work, meaning physical labor. It is actually done on an intellectual battlefield, meaning it isn't necessarily he who knows the most, it is he who can convince others that they know the most, right? If when I was younger, I always used to think that people who were the most successful were the people who were the most educated, and they were the people who knew the most, and they were the people who worked the hardest. But after coming to proximity with these kinds of individuals all the time, I have come to realize that honestly, it is whoever is first. Right? It is whoever can convince other people that they know more than everybody else. That really is the person who gets ahead. So that's something I think that is interesting. And part of this is qualifications. One of the things that I've come to learn, particularly as somebody who is in the counseling world, you would think that the best people who would probably be the best counselors would be counselors today. But actually, what I've come to realize is people who get paid a lot of money in not only counseling, but other healthcare fields are the people who've got the qualifications, right? So a dead giveaway that somebody grew up poor is that they don't understand that in this game of life, in this world that we occupy, one of the ways in which we move forward in the world is by having education. We have qualifications. We have stuff to back up what we say or what we claim we are capable of. And when somebody grew up poor, sometimes they don't realize that having the qualification gives you credibility. It gives you a massive advantage because no one can really challenge your ability to understand the theory, right, of whatever it is that you're doing. So that's one of the things. The other thing that I wrote down here and that I was reflecting on is the views. If you listen to people who come from a sort of a poor or grew up poor, one of the things that becomes very evident is their views. And I say this as somebody who's worked in a school, somebody who's worked in the corporate world. And when you work in a school, not only do I have worked in a school where there is a huge range in the financial and economic power of the parents of the children, but also I've been lucky in that I've met a lot of very successful people when I was selling houses. And one of the things that becomes very evident when you listen to children is their attitudes, their philosophies, their worldviews, right? Many people who grew up poor, one of the rhetoric that they have is that they are basically the victim, right? Many of them blame the government. They blame everybody else for their ill in the world, because part of it is because they haven't yet developed urgency. They haven't yet developed responsibility and full accountability. They haven't yet understood that they have the power to actually become better, to grow, acquire more knowledge, to pursue wisdom. They don't understand that they can equip themselves with new skills. They can build a team around them. They don't yet understand that. And even when they understand that, many times the bridge between where they are and that potential person who they are capable of becoming is so large that they never actually end up starting the journey. They never end up trying to become who they're capable of becoming. So that's definitely one of the things that becomes very evident. One of the other things that also becomes evident is the goals, aims, and visions. When you start listening to people who have grown up poor, and you start to listen to where they want to be in 5 years, in 10 years, many times they don't have a vision of that. Many times they don't have a blueprint. They don't have a forecast of where they're going to be. They're kind of leaving their destiny up to fate. They're leaving it up to the forces that feel that they're greater than themselves, meaning politics, meaning the economy, meaning the government. And what I would suggest, and is something that I personally have had to adopt, is to understand that the greatest power that exists in the world is decision making. Is when a person decides that they want to become something, they want to do something, and basically they just start heading in that direction. They may not have all the answers, they may not have all the resources, but essentially they just, if all they can see is 2 steps forward, they take step 1, and then they take step 2, and then they move forward from that space, right? They do not need to see the entire path in front of them in order to get going. And one of the other things that I would say is on this is look at yourself if you are listening to this and you are genuinely interested in this question because you genuinely think that you growing up poor is somewhat hindering you, is look at the goals that you have. How far ahead are you thinking? Are you a generational thinker? Because, if you look at, for example, some of the wealthiest people in the world, many of those people didn't acquire that wealth in a generation. They acquired that wealth in 2 or 3 generations. They have their children or their children's children, or their grandparents started a company and then their dad took it over. Now they've taken it over. I'm suggesting that if you are somebody who grew up poor, you might want to consider how far ahead you are projecting into the future. And the reason why I say this is because your ability to forecast will determine what sort of goals you go for. Meaning that if you want big things in life, it's going to basically take time. In simple English, it's going to take ages. And so if you want big things in your life, if you want to really push to the edges of your capacity, you will have no choice but to basically think long term. You're going to have to start thinking 5, 10, 15, 20 years ahead, right? If you are somebody who wants to go from, at the moment you're earning £20,000 and you want to go to earning £500,000 a year, it's a big goal, right? And that is not going to be done overnight. You may need to go get educated. You may need to start a business. You may need to start investing. And that is not going to be done in 2 or 3 years. That's going to take you decades to achieve that. But the great thing about it is you can do it. You can achieve it if you really want it and if you make the decision to do it. The other thing that I wrote down here is relationships, trauma, projection, discipline, accountability. All of this is essentially to say that one of the things that begins to become very evident that someone grew up poor is who they associate with. There is a saying that I once heard from a pastor, and the pastor said, it was T.D. Jakes. He said, as you go through your life, you want to build a team for the task. Meaning that a lot of people who grow up poor associate with who they know, not who they need in order to get to where they want to get to, if that kind of makes sense. And so, the example that I give people is, if you want to have a child, as much as your best friend might be a wonderful person, a midwife if you want to give birth, as much as your best friend might be a wonderful person, a midwife might be a better option to use than your best friend, because they know certain things, they understand medicine, they know the process, they've done this 1,000 times, they can reassure you, they can give you guidance, right? They can walk you and talk you through what's happening and what's going to be happening next. And your best friend is most probably not going to have that knowledge unless they've gone through the process themselves, which changes things, but you understand what I'm saying, right? And so one of the things that becomes very evident when you meet people who did come from a poor background is they're being held back from moving forward because the people who they have around them cannot help them to realize their potential and their capacity and their greatness. And they won't recruit or join or partner with anybody else who is not like them, who thinks like them. This is part of the reason why university is so important, because university gets you to think outside of the box. It gets you to meet people, to meet peers who can challenge your worldview, who can challenge your philosophy, who can challenge your theory and your way of thinking, which of course improves your ability to make decisions, right? It improves your ability to to philosophize and bring multiple pieces of information from multiple different angles together, right? It teaches you a set of skills like researching, like analysis. There's so much that getting around people who are different from you, or who are the complete opposite to you, or who are older than you, or who are ahead of you, really gives you. And I've just noticed that many people who come from a poor background don't get people around them who are different from them, who are ahead of them, who are more successful than them. And one of the things that I remember listening to Jim Rohn say is that Jim Rohn said, poor people should take rich people out to dinner and ask them how they became successful. And he said, well, the problem is, poor people would never take someone rich out because they would say the rich person should take me out. But in reality, were they to take a rich person out and keep paying for dinner and fork out, £100, in that £100 and those 2 or 3 hours, if they can just pull multiple pieces of information and just keep asking questions of this successful person, they would be able to get incredible insights and principles that could really help them in their life. The other thing that I wrote down here is the state of the person, right? In other words, the result. Look at the person. The person and where they are is a dead giveaway as to whether they grew up poor. Look at their clothing. Look at the way they come across. Look at their vibe. Look at their results. Look at their attitude. Look at their how much they're projecting, or how their manners, right? Look at their decorum. Look at their ability to discern who they're speaking to and change the way they communicate accordingly, right? Look at their failures and how their failures have affected them. Just look at the state of the person. Look at overall, holistically, everything to do with a person. Do they brush their teeth? Do they look hygienic? Do they smell well? Do they have a fresh haircut? Does the person take care of themselves eventually, right? Does this person want more for themselves than other people want for them? All of these, in my opinion, are indicators as to the state of the person. So those are what I wanted to share with you. I don't know whether you can find them useful or not. I don't know whether you agree with me or not. I'm always interested to know what people think and whether people agree with me or not. But anyway, comment below, write your thoughts. Do you agree with me? Don't you agree with me? This is just a conversation. I'm just giving you reflections on what I've gone through and what I've experienced. And maybe you disagree. That's fine. I don't mind. Thank you very much for listening. I really appreciate it. I will speak to you very soon. Bye for now.